Absolutely, and it's important to note that Ibrahim's Magmar running the overheat, but for Joan is Heat Wave, so that will be providing spread damage rather than single target, a bit less of it. There is a chance to miss for both, but overheat reduces your special attack after you use it. Heat Wave does not do that. Of course, Joan and Ibrahim consider carefully which one they use for the compositions they're going up against, and now it's time to get into our top 16. Look at those beautiful shiny Pokemon on the field. Sneaslers staring each other down, Primarina ready to be the star of the show, but King Gambit ready to overrule proceedings.
He is just sitting there ready to start to go for those sword stances if he wants to do that, but you've got to do that in front of Pokemon that are really quite problematic for King Gambit. So I do think Ibrahim's got the better end of this lead matchup, and I think it's up to Joan to make sure that he can reposition effectively. At least the Sneasler on both sides of the field is putting pressure on the partner Pokemon, so the King Gambit is struggling to get set up, but the Primarina is also not wanting to take a Dire Claw, not just because of those second effects, but the super effective damage that it can unleash.
And remember that Joan Sneasler does not have access to Fake Out here, as King Gambit decides to become spooky, even scarier than it once was. An immediate Ghost Terrestrialization, as Primarina will be just scouting out for this turn. It's time for Ibrahim Sneasler to attempt the close combat into the King Gambit. So really good Ghost Terror there. Of course, not doing any damage into the Ghost type, being a fighting type move. And Dire Claw targets it down into the protecting Primarina. Time for this King Gambit to move, but it's going into the Primarina. So although the health bars may remain the same, a lot has changed in that turn one.
It really has. I mean, the Terra Ghost, the commitment to the Terra Ghost on the King Gambit early with Joan, it's not a Terra type that we see very often, and it does allow it to sit in front of the Sneasler very comfortably, with Ghost type also always being resisting the poison type Dire Claw as well. There's a nice little double up as well. Dire Claw plus Kowtow Cleave may have been able to pick up the KO onto the Primarina, even if it goes for its Terra Poison.
Yeah, and with Terra Poison, of course, it wouldn't be able to be poisoned from Dire Claw, but you could still have the chance to sleep or be paralyzed. Time for the coaching to come out from Joan Sneasler. Time for King Gambit to be put through its paces, get a boost to its attack and defense. Really nice in the face of this physical attacking Sneasler. Dire Claw, not very effective. Does it get a status condition there? Or Poison Touch is going to activate first. So this King Gambit will now be on a timer. Doesn't seem to have any access to healing, as Hyper Voice will be becoming a water type move thanks to the Liquid Voice ability. Kowtow Cleave now into the Primarina, no longer resisted because it's no longer a fairy type. It's a poison type, getting a nice bit of recovery back up to about 50%.
Really brave for Joan to be going for the coaching in that situation, knowing that there was haze potential on the Primarina as well. Primarina can just change things up a little bit and be able to go for maybe a Moonblast and a Dire Claw into the King Gambit and stop it from being able to act, but then you do risk the Sucker Punch from the King Gambit into the Primarina. Instead, Ibrahim might be content to use that haze in this position, maybe try to break the Focus Sash or use the broken Focus Sash on Sneasler on Joan's side of the field. There are so many Sneasler on the field right now, Charlie. And just to be able to get a little bit further forward, given that we know that Ibrahim in the back doesn't have the most potential for damage options.
Yeah, well, Magmar the Teeny's going to be joining the field. Let's hope it's not put off in the face of these scary King Gambit and Sneasler on the other side. Primarina able to stall out once more with a Protect here. Where have Joan's Pokemon targeted? It's going to be the Sucker Punch. It's going to fail because the Magmar just switched in. You've got to be readying a damaging move for that to work. Close combat into the Magmar, taking it like an absolute champion, thanks to the Eviolite held item, boosting the defenses of a Pokemon yet to evolve.
Ibrahim has done something really nice in this situation. Being able to block the Sucker Punch by switching and protecting, and then also being able to get their redirect to the Follow Me in, but at the same time preserving the Focus Sash on the Sneasler for a little bit later on. That gives the Primarina much more room with the Follow Me ability to be able to land some damage into this now Rillaboom and King Gambit.
This Rillaboom is going to be mitigating the poison damage on the King Gambit thanks to the grassy terrain it's set up with its grassy surge ability. Follow Me, Magmar is going to steal the limelight from the Primarina, becoming the center of attention in this what was previously a one seal show, I guess you'd say, but critical hit coming out, and that's going to be the Terra option down for Joan. That's King Gambit down and out. The Hyper Voice, of course, not very effective into the Rillaboom because of the Liquid Voice ability becoming a water type move.
and the Terra Poison is showing why it's a really good option for Primarina, where once the Rillaboom would be able to knock it out with a Wood Hammer or even a Grassy Glide, especially from this HP range, the Terra Poison is doing so much work resisting that, but also resisting the damage from Sneasler coming in as well. Even with some coaching boost, it's still going to be struggling to do damage.
It certainly will, but coaching is going to be coming out for this Rillaboom. Its drum is going to be hitting even louder. Its solo is going to be even more piercing, providing a nice little percussive accompaniment for the singing Primarina. But Overheat going to be coming out into the Rillaboom, dropping the Magmar special attack and dealing really good damage. And you want to remove that Rillaboom while you can. It's really threatening with that Assault Vest there, providing fake outs later on in the game.
Depending on how the Rillaboom and the Magmar have been trained, it could be that the Magmar is going to be outspeeding the Rillaboom and able to land an Overheat, a second Overheat into the Rillaboom. It's not able to protect itself, and that looks like a really big risk for Joan, something he might have to think about playing around. And I'm struggling at this stage to see how you actually deal with this Terra Poison Primarina if you're Joan. Do you have that last Pokemon in the back that can really deal with it? So you want to try to focus down the Magmar, maybe get a Grassy Glide and a close combat into it after the coaching boost. That could be enough to pick up the KO there on the Magmar, and then you try and deal with the Primarina a little bit later.
Yeah, perhaps. Well, Magmar is once again going to follow me, and Grassy Glide not going to be doing much damage into that at all, but boosted by the Grassy terrain being a grass-type move. Another coaching coming out onto this Rillaboom. Ooh. Rillaboom realizing that it has the opportunity to get these boosts now. A lot of attack and defensive boosts, but Moonblast going to be enough just to pick up the knockout onto that Sneasler, being neutral damage into poison and fighting.
Ibrahim doing very, very well here. The Follow Me taking away the Grassy Glide there. It's looking like Rillaboom is getting further and further away from being KO'd by this Overheat, but there it is. It's the Dondozo coming into play, the last slot. And well, Charlie, yeah, if there was a Pokemon that could knock out any other Pokemon on the field, it is that Fisher Dondozo. Very unlikely to be hitting the amount of times that it needs to, but because Primarina is Terra Poison, now that opens up the Liquidation, in fact, on the Dondozo to be able to do some damage, and it doesn't have that recoil to worry about.
Yeah, it's really nice having that Liquidation there. We saw a Dondozo yesterday nearly KO itself on stream, or it did KO itself on stream thanks to all of that recoil damage from the Wave Crash, but the burn on the Dondozo is going to be mitigating its damage from physical moves, but that big boosted Wood Hammer is enough to remove this Primarina from the field totally. So huge coaching coming out from the Sneasler on one side.
What a Wood Hammer. That's definitely something that you don't really want to be taking every day of the week, but you can see how good that Will-O-Wisp was. The burn mitigation, the Eviolite on the Magmar, just compounding the defenses of it to be able to survive this turn. Now, even though the Rillaboom has had those boosts, it's been able to do a lot of work. We had the confirmation there, if we didn't before, that the Magmar was indeed faster than the Rillaboom. There is still the Follow Me. Sneasler has its Focus Sash intact. It does have Fake Out support available to it, but because that Rillaboom cannot protect itself, the Dire Claw is a nice, easy target to try and pick off that pesky Rillaboom.
Certainly is. Speaking of pesky, what about those status moves that could come out? Grassy Glide now with those boosts. Enough to send the Magmar back to its Pokeball, and now it's going to be the Dire Claw, Super Effects onto the Rillaboom, more than enough to claim the KO here. So it's just going to be Dondozo, Big Fish versus Sneasler against whatever Ibrahim has. Waiting in the back, but the Fisher connects onto Ibrahim Sneasler. Oh my goodness! You click it once and it connects, but the Focus Sash is going to be enough for the Sneasler to hang on. Oh my goodness!
That is one of the best item choices right there on the Sneasler. And normally it's because of big damaging attacks, not because of Fisher, but we're 1 for 1 here in this top 16 match. And looking at the Rillaboom coming out, that's the perfect Pokemon to try and target down this Dondozo. But if the combination of Close Combat and Wood Hammer isn't enough, I mean, technically, I guess there's a chance that you get the Fisher onto the Rillaboom somehow, and then the leftovers and the grassy terrain recovery is enough. But I mean, this is a real uphill battle for Joan.
Yeah, it is an uphill battle. I mean, where there's a Fisher, there's kind of a way, but you can't connect with two Pokemon at once. Joan realizing that, and so it's going to be Ibrahim beating our #1 seed, going 1 game ahead in this top 16 match in Dortmund.
Not just #1 seed overall coming into the top 16, he was #1 seed in day 1 as well.
Yeah.
So he has been doing so well here in Dortmund. Wow, what a match. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there with how these trainers had approached the game, but it looked like Ibrahim was kind of ahead most of the way through, just being able to, even though Joan created a big problem with that Terra Ghost King Gambit early. I think the Terra Poison on the Primarina did so much work to be able to just sort of sit there turn after turn and chip away and chip away and chip away. Even though Joan was able to get those boosts with coaching onto the Rillaboom, it just wasn't quite enough.
Interesting to note that it's Terra Fire on Joan's Dondozo there, so if he did have that up his sleeve in the later game, then that would have been great against the Rillaboom. Not so much, of course, against the Sneasler, though, which would have been neutral damage anyway. But I think you're right. It was, yeah, the King Gambit very threatened by fighting-type moves, hence the Ghost-type coming out. But that was the Terra option spent pretty early for Joan. And now heading into this game, too, how are you going to adapt? Are you expecting your opponent to go with the same lead? Are you expecting them to switch it up?
I want to see the Dragapult here.
Yeah.
I want to see that coming out, even if you're not going for okay, I'm going to clarify. I want Joan to bring the Dragapult in this game and try to put pressure on it a little bit earlier that way. Where the King Gambit was under pressure, as you mentioned, in turn 1, that's why he had to spend the Terra so early against the Sneasler. The Dragapult would put some pressure on it, would break a Focus Sash. You could even go for the Phantom Force and try to chip down that Primarina a little bit more, and then just Phantom Force for the KO, and there's not too many ways that Ibrahim can punish that very quickly.
Yeah, I guess not. Well, it's time to find out what their game plan is. There it is. There's Dragapult coming out for Joan alongside Magmar. And once again, Sneasler and Primarina for Ibrahim.
And that Primarina is in a prime spot to be trying to do a little bit of damage. Of course, it's not going to take too much damage against a Magmar, but the Magmar is going to be able to redirect away the Fairy-type attacks that Dragapult really doesn't want to have to deal with. And of course, with the fact that Primarina is a Fairy type, if the Dragapult does go for the Dragon Darts on this turn, they would target both into the Sneasler, picking up a one-hit knockout.
As it is, though, Sneasler just going for the Protect, as is Magmar. So Phantom Force actually coming out. Really nice play from Joan here. We'll have to see on the next turn where that Dragapult targeted, as the Primarina is left alone to go for its wonderful solo on the field. Not that it will be doing anything here with the Magmar keeping itself safe.
We'll be appreciating it here behind the desk, won't we? But yeah, Phantom Force, a great target there, and I would be very shocked if that wasn't into the Primarina slot. So Ibrahim is going to need to kind of figure out if the Primarina is able to take that. There's no helping hand on the Magmar on Joan's side of the field, so there's no sort of extra damage that it can do, but you can just redirect away the Moonblast. Yeah, okay, you might have to take a Liquid Voice, Hyper Voice onto the Magmar, but you're kind of okay doing that.
Yeah, you are, and speaking of okay, it's just going to be the Poison coming out from Diaclaw onto the Magmar. Probably the one you want to see in this situation, but it was, in fact, the Sneasler being brought down to its Focus Sash here. So clever targeting by Joan. Sneasler hanging on with just 1 HP, but the Heat Wave going to be a double connect and enough to pick up the Sneasler.
Well, Sneasler going down there is definitely a benefit for Joan if that King Gambit is in the back. Of course, predicting that there will be the Follow Me, and Ibrahim sort of leaning into that play, going for the Hyper Voice. So Joan realizing that actually with the Follow Me support in play, you've actually got a little bit of time. You don't have to necessarily go for the Phantom Force into the Primarina early doors. Take out some of the support, and then you can focus down the Primarina a little bit later while it's not incentivized to go for a Moonblast.
Right, exactly. And speaking of Moonblast, it's such a nice move, or such a nice pairing that Joan has to deal with that, as you were saying there, Ben, because Follow Me from the Magmar, being a Fire-type Pokemon, it's not very effective, a Fairy-type move into that, whereas it's super effects onto Dragapult. So the ideal redirection here, but then of course you've got to face the water type Hyper Voice that's super effective against the Magmar.
Now Magmar coming in for Ibrahim is going to cause some other problems with that Dragapult with the Follow Me. I think Ibrahim's leaning into this and predicting that that Dragapult is going to be leaving the field this turn. It doesn't have to deal with a Phantom Force or redirect it later as the Rillaboom is coming in. And of course, maybe predicting that the Magmar is going to go for a Follow Me and not attacking, but it's not going for a Follow Me. A Dragapult is disappearing. Taunt coming out onto that Assault Vest. Rillaboom not going to be able to impact it whatsoever. And the Moonblast is there to finish off that Magmar. So I think all in all, that Rillaboom's pretty happy with the way that turn played out.
Now remember, that wasn't a double knockout on the field, trainers, even though we don't see any Pokemon on Joan's side. That Dragapult is just waiting in the wings, ready to strike on stage on Ibrahim's side. Kingambit will be joining the field right now. If there's one Pokemon you don't mind having taunted, it's a Pokemon holding an Assault Vest that can only go for attacking moves anyway.
And the Phantom Force is going to come back in for the Dragapult now. And again, we're going to have to see where it targeted. If it's into the Primarina, it's probably not going to be able to quite pick up the knockout here, but it's going to do significant damage. And I think with Kingambit now being revealed on Joan's side, I think he's played this really, really well, identifying the Sneasler as a big, big problem. And now using the Terra Ghost onto the Kingambit to avoid a fake out from Ibrahim. It's going to be able to act this turn.
Kingambit and Dragapult ready to celebrate Halloween. Both ghost types on the field here in Masters Top 16. Fake out, of course, not going to do anything. Being a normal type move into a ghost type. There's Sucker Punch. Good for a little bit of chip. Is it Phantom Force into Primarina? Yes, it is. Is it enough? Yes, it is. Primarina is down for Ibrahim. Just down to the Magmar and the Rillaboom.
What a choice of moves there from that Kingambit. The Sucker Punch doing that little bit of chip damage that Joan needed to be able to pick up the knockout from the Dragapult. Phantom Force landing into it, getting the KO, reducing all of the options that Ibrahim has remaining. But there is that Magmar. It's going to be coming out onto the field. Rillaboom's going to get a little bit more opportunity to do some damage, but the Dragapult, being a dragon type, is going to be resisting those grass type moves and the fire type moves of the Magmar, and it's just going to be able to keep going for Phantom Forces. It's going to be able to keep putting damage on the board. And of course, there's still one Pokemon that Joan has not yet revealed, probably the Sneasler. If that's the case, knocking out the Magmar with a combination of Dragapult and Kingambit would give you a great opportunity to bring that Sneasler in the back and just use Dire Claw to be able to dispatch off the Rillaboom.
Masterful adaptations coming out from Joan. I say adaptations, but this Dragapult has done one thing all game, and that is vanish, and then reappear at the appropriate moment. And the Will-O-Wisp, of course, not connecting into the Kingambit. Neither is the Woodhammer. Joan has this luxury now to be able to play around with these protects. Of course, Woodhammer no longer resisted by the Kingambit, being a ghost type, and it's boosted by the grassy terrain to boot. This Kingambit, it can counter all it likes, but is it going to appreciate a massive hammer to this head?
It's definitely not. Now that it's lost its steel typing, that's going to be doing neutral damage, and so the Kingambit, yeah, it's going to take a bit of damage. It might get Will-O-Wisp for its troubles, but you're still not dealing with that Dragapult. That's the big thing in this end game here, that Joan has just positioned it so well, not been concerned about the Magmar going for the redirections here. And look at that damage on the Magmar, harrying the Eviolite. Magmar's doing a really good job here, getting the Will-O-Wisp onto the Dragapult, slowing it down.
Yeah, absolutely. With that Will-O-Wisp, it's now not going to be dealing quite as much damage as it did before. How much is this Woodhammer going to do? Really, really good. It's brought down to about a third of its HP. Kingambit able to dish out a Kowtow Cleave to the Magmar. Oh, and the Eviolite is going to be enough for the Magmar to hang on. Oh, I love these fine margins, Ben.
such a fine margin, but it's definitely not going to be able to take another Phantom Force. And of course, the second effect of Phantom Force is that it does break through Protect. That's why it's one of the most powerful ghost type moves we have. Yes, you've got to wait a turn for that damage to go off, but you can be rest assured, unless a Maushold switches in, it's not going to be able to be stopped from doing a lot of damage there. And again, like I said before, if that Sneasler is in the back for Joan, it's just a matter of time.
Well, King Gambit's going to be scouting out for this particular turn. May as well. You have the option to. And again, an unrevealed Pokemon in the back. Magmar deciding to follow me just to mitigate threats on the field. I think we all know what this Dragapult's going to do. It's saying, see ya, and it's out of here. Deciding to reappear on the next turn. Rillaboom not going to be able to do anything into this protecting King Gambit.
And, yeah, I mean, we are definitely in that situation. I think Ibrahim's doing a really good job here of just taking his time and just thinking about the things that he can do coming into game 3. That's really what we're thinking about. We've been in this position long enough for the grassy terrain to expire, and that hurts the Rillaboom yet more. Just stops that damage output, stops the recovery on, well, both sides of the field, I suppose. Yeah, it's... Still, Ibrahim struggling to be able to do damage as the Magmar does indeed fall to a Phantom Force.
If you get this to an end game where it's just a Rillaboom against a burnt Dragapult, it is holding the choice ban, so it's still going to be a lot of damage, but you can see the impact of the lack of grassy terrain here. That Wood Hammer is just not beefed up enough to pick up the knockout onto the King Gambit, and now with Rillaboom hanging on there, it's, you know, it's still looking very much in Joan's favor. There's just a lot of health to work with on that Dragapult on Joan's side. The burn is chipping away at it, though.
I do like what Joan's doing in this situation, though. I mean, there is the temptation to play a little bit more aggressively when you know you're so far ahead and you know what the Pokemon in the back is and whether or not it can deal with the Rillaboom. But you might as well not show what that Pokemon that you brought is. It leaves your opponent guessing as to whether the Sneasler did come to the match. I mean, yeah, we can sit here and say it's probably going to be the Sneasler. It looks like that with the way that he's playing. But that doesn't mean that you have to reveal it to your opponent. And even though we've got open team sheets, there is some information on the board. There's not every last bit of information.
Yeah, I mean, if it were the Dondozo, then just like in the previous game, Rillaboom's in an incredible position. But it would be interesting to see that coming out, given that Ibrahim clearly is very happy to bring the Rillaboom into this matchup, as Joan is just deciding how to absolutely cement the victory to take us through to a game 3. As Dragapult once more said, I'm off, actually. Do you need anything from the shops, King Gambit? Because I get a pint of milk or anything. I can provide that for you.
That sounds great, actually. Yeah, hit me up, Dragapult. I'll see you at home. I'll see you at home.
Well, Sucker Punch now into the Rillaboom, and that just in itself is going to be enough to secure the knockout. And so, trainers, we love to see it. Masters top 16, we're going to a game 3.
Game 3, everything to play for. It comes down to this as to whether our trainers will be advancing into the top 8 here at the Dortmund Regional Championships. What a way to adjust as well. I mean, it looked like Ibrahim was just totally in control of that game 1 all the way through, but the total reverse was true of game 2. With the Dragapult there, it did so much work just going for Phantom Force over and over again. Joan really did have a handle on that matchup, and the way that he targeted down the Sneasler was so good. Now, looking into game 3, Charlie, we've got some probable change-ups here for Ibrahim. Do you reckon that the Dragapult might be coming for Ibrahim this time?
Oh, now, that would be one way to step on the gas, wouldn't it? If you bring a Dragapult apiece and they threaten each other with super effective damage. Would I see the Dragapult coming out here? I mean, you've got the King Gambit there, and that's going to be resisting Ghost and Dragon-type moves. Of course, Ibrahim also has the King Gambit, so a bold choice for Joan to bring it. But once you've got a handle on how Ibrahim plays after that game 1, deciding that that was going to be the play to step on the gas, and given how much Phantom Force could achieve there, navigating around those protects and of course hitting through protects, really nice. I think for Ibrahim to adjust to that Dragapult, you could then bring your own King Gambit, threaten it with a Sucker Punch, but then you can have that King Gambit mirror. Neither of these King Gambits have the low kick option to be able to hit each other for super effective damage. Of course, once you terastallize into the Ghost type, then your Dark type moves become super effective into each other. So mind games are plenty right now, but perhaps that King Gambit could come out for Ibrahim.
I think, yeah, definitely. You've got to be thinking about how you can do damage to it. I mean, I think that was Ibrahim's a little bit of a struggle with the 4 Pokemon that he brought. It really just didn't have any coverage into Dragon typing. So yeah, maybe you don't lean into the Dragon type. Maybe you lean into doing damage to the Ghost type with a King Gambit. We'll have to see. As here we are, Charlie, we're getting into game 3.
You'd be forgiven for thinking it was the grand finals, trainers, but this is just the intensity we reach in top 16. Use the hashtag #PlayPokemon. Let us know how thrilled you are by this incredible action we've got going on here as Ibrahim takes on Joan in game 3 of Masters top 16. It's going to be King Gambit and Sneasler for Joan, and Primarina Sneasler once again for Ibrahim.
2 games in a row, we've had King Gambit going for a Terra Ghost. Will it go for another Terra Ghost? This is one of those big decision moments in Game 3. Do you do what you've been doing all set long, or do you deviate at this point? Can Ibrahim take advantage of that? Does just a close combat into the King Gambit pick up a knockout straight away? There's no Terra.
There's no Terra, so if it's targeted down, then that would be absolutely massive. There is a protect, though, from the King Gambit. So Joan, once again, just scouting out, but we're going to see the fake out that was connecting down into the Sneasler on Joan's side of the field, leaving the Primarina free to get off a Moonblast, targeting down into the Sneasler. Now, of course, if that were, to go into the King Gambit, and you were to get a cheeky special attack drop onto the King Gambit, then that would activate the Define ability, giving it a +2 to its attack. So wise targeting there from Ibrahim. And interesting to see Joan not leading the Dragapult here that worked so well for him in Game 2. Just expecting an adjustment perhaps from Ibrahim.
The targeting of the Sneasler in that situation from Ibrahim does kind of set us up for maybe there is that King Gambit adjustment in the back. If your opponent, if Joan lead the Dragapult, you're still in an okay situation with Sneasler and the Primarina, but you can just switch into King Gambit and kind of react to it more after the fact than try to prepare for it straight away, and then you get to prepare for the other Pokemon as well. But there is that Terra Ghost from the King Gambit coming out in Game 3.
Really interesting. Let's hope this Terra Ghost King Gambit is the play here after losing Game 1 in the game where Joan terrored his King Gambit before, as Primarina just scouting out. Diaclaw was connected down into Primarina. Would have been super effective. Poison into a part Fairy-type Pokemon. Close combat, going to be connecting into the Sneasler, predicting perhaps the Terra Ghost coming out from Joan's own King Gambit. And so now this Sneasler over on Ibrahim's side softened up, taking a Kowtow Cleave, not enough to bring it down to its Focus Sash. Both Sneaslers down to about 1/3 of their health.
That's a really good set of targeting there from both of these players. Most notably, we've broken the Focus Sash on both of those Sneaslers. So if it is a speed tie between the 2 Sneaslers, it's down to who goes first, and it's going to be Ibrahim's picking up the KO.
Ibrahim's Sneasler is doing the goods here, as Joan's own is going to be returning to its Pokeball. So Ibrahim currently up in terms of Pokemon numbers advantage. Hyper Voice connecting into the King Gambit. Now remember, that counts as a Water-type move in this situation, being changed by the Liquid Voice ability. That's why it's connecting with the Ghost-type King Gambit. Kowtow Cleave just chipping away at this Primarina that caused Joan so many problems in Game 1. And here's Dondozo, very interesting.
Ibrahim really standing their ground and knowing that that was the key moment to go for that maybe a little bit of a risky play, but it's paid off so well. No Diaclaw coming out from Joan's Sneasler into the Primarina means that Primarina is sitting nice and healthy, and with the Dondozo coming in, I think we're playing a different game now. What happens if the Fisher starts hitting? Oh, it's got to sleep!
The Dondozo is gonna have a little nap on the field after that Diaclaw activates its sleep possibility. Goodness gracious me, the King Gambit able to do a little victory dance here and boost its attack sharply. Those Sucker Punches are going to be even more threatening than they were before, but at least on the very turn that you go to sleep, Dondozo being so slow, you do burn that mandatory turn of sleep, so it could just wake up on the very next turn.
Every cloud has a silver lining, Charlie. It really does in this situation. But wow, what a turn there for Ibrahim. Just close combat, getting the KO on the Sneasler. Diaclaw getting the sleep on the Dondozo. Now the King Gambit's got itself set up, but Primarina does resist those Sucker Punches with its Fairy typing, and because of the Citrus Berries, if it lands in, it's not going to do too much damage. But now the Dragapult coming in.
This is so interesting coming out from Joan, just completely changing out the Pokemon he brings every single game. Diaclaw into the Dragapult. Are we going to see another cheeky stasis condition? No, we're not, but Moonblast connected down into the King Gambit. Would have been super effective into the Dragapult that just switched in there. So again, really interesting to have the Dragapult lurking in the back this time for Joan.
But now that Dragapult has to spend 2 turns trying to knock out that Primarina. Primarina is still in a brilliant position to be able to dispatch of that King Gambit, even though because it resists those Sucker Punches well. There's still 2 Pokemon in the back for Ibrahim. He's not revealed anything. Joan has had to use all of the Pokemon at his disposal to get to this stage of the game. So in terms of the resource management game, Ibrahim is definitely ahead. And those Pokemon in the back, if there's Rillaboom in the back, it's going to be able to do a lot of work against that Dondozo as well.
Yeah, even more so if the Dondozo decides to just stay in bed. But Dondozo is going to rejoin the field here. Let's see if it is going to be able to wake up on this turn. Diaclaw once more into Dragon Ball. The more you use it, the more you might get a safe condition. And that's another sleep. Oh my goodness.
He's done it again.
It is snooze time for Joan's team right now. As far as they're concerned, it's the middle of the night. They don't mind if they're going to take a Moonblast when they're asleep. And here it is. There's one connected down into Dondozo.
How can you sleep in a game like this? It's all to play for. It's top 16 at Dortmund. Wake up.
Alarm bells are certainly ringing here, and poor Joan is just going to have to hope and pray that these Pokemon are going to be able to wake up sooner rather than later, because right now Ibrahim is running rampant, and it's just going to be the forfeit. It's going to be Ibrahim. You're going through after top 16 in Dortmund. Oh, time for us to have a nap now.
I was going to say, Charlie, the floor is looking pretty good right now, Charlie. Oh, that was such an intense game. But this is, I mean, we've been talking about it quite a lot this weekend already. That is what happens when you can use Sneasler, when you can go for the Diaclaw. Yes, Ibrahim got...